Go where your best prayers take you, unclench the fists of your spirit and take it easy. Breathe deeply of the glad air and live one day at a time. Know that you are precious and learn to trust. Amen. Well, good morning. It's good to see all of you and all the family gathered around Garland for this wonderful day. Welcome. If you're not part of our community, we're sure really glad to have you, and all of you who are guests with us today. I know a doctor who he and his wife have adopted some baby Labrador retrievers, and they've been walking them in their neighborhood. So I want to tell you the story. They walk around the block, and just a few doors up from where they live, they have a neighbor, and they have a golden retriever named Doodles. And Doodles she's a female and kind of 5 years old, and she wants to play with those little dogs so badly. And she races out from the house and runs out there and jumps up and down, barks and runs up and down. And when she starts to go out, guess what? She comes to an abrupt halt. Why? Electric fence. And she just, and you can see her. And he said it's just comical to watch, but it's awful because she's whining and she wants to play with these puppies, and she barks louder and louder and louder. And he said one day when they were going by, Doodles just did that dance and everything, and then in complete exasperation, threw herself nose down into the ground, harumphed, and then he said, I swear she just moaned. So he saw his neighbor a few days later, and he told him about it. He said, Doodles wants to come out and play, and I wish she could. And he said, and he laughed. He said, she is the sweetest dog. She would be so nice to those puppies. He said, what's funny about it? She is a sweet dog. And and we finally decided the cars aren't that bad in the neighborhood. We turned that electric fence off months ago. You see, Doodles could get out, but she would not. It's that old training. The old habits that are so strong in us. They're so ingrained. And she would not disobey that electric fence, even when she's been shown it's done. Those days are over. They're not over for her. I know that we are not Labrador retrievers. But interestingly enough, I want to direct your attention away from the gospel and back to that little portion of Philippians. The lessons from Philippi is talking to us about the same characteristic in humans that I just described in these sweet dogs. Boundaries that are hard to see. Boundaries that are hard to shake. Boundaries that are hard to expand, even when we have been given permission to do so. And that characteristic is deeply ingrained in your faith. Every one of you has this inside, whether you know it or not. Every person has this. It applies to lots of parts of our life, but I promise you it is deeply embedded in our faith and spirituality. This summer we did a fun service, intended to. We wanted it to be light and easy and went out to Lakeshore Park. Some of you came, some did not. And we just gathered and we said, bring a chair, bring a dog. Well, lots of you did, brought a chair and brought a dog. And we had kind of easier music, and it was great. And what was interesting, we had no idea if people would like it or not, and I appreciate everybody who worked hard to kind of make it organized, our musicians, Joe and other people. But it just went well. Afterwards, I was kind of scratching my head. I'm thoughtful about things. I thought, why did it mean so much? Because people would stop me everywhere to talk. I had people I've never seen said, you don't know me, I was walking the track and I came to your church. And I was thinking, my track. And then I realized they meant Lakeshore. And so I started asking people, and Tom and Chris Tommy Soller has, we've been asking people, what in the world, why did that touch you? Because I really wanted to understand what we were seeing. So here's some of the comments that you have added, and later give me some more. Somebody said, we could dress casually and you have any idea what that meant about going to church. We could bring our pets, a part of our life nobody gets to see. The kids didn't have to dress up and I didn't have to fight with them. They actually wanted to go. I got that one. Somebody else said, it was noisy and I loved it. Half the time I couldn't hear you and Tom at all. That's probably a blessing. I could say they heard Chris and didn't like it, but I'm not going to say it. Somebody said the sermons were short. I thought, got that. Somebody said, it was great to be relaxed at church and humor. And then somebody, the most unusual person, said this, you know, it really wasn't about y'all. I got what he meant. It wasn't about those of us who are often in leadership. The energy and focus was on the people gathered. And then one other person said this, that was the number one, you know what the number one answer was? It was fun. I heard it over and again. It was fun. It was fun. It was fun. To the point that I started thinking, I need to think about this as a priest. You see, if our summer worship did anything, it just reminds us, doesn't it, that all kind of worship works. It really does. We all get a little stuffy about it. Mine's better than yours and all that kind of stuff. But all kind of worship works, and it all counts. It all counts. God cares about all of our worship. Come on. All the kind of music, the prayers we do, homily, short, long, good or bad. It all counts, actually. But the other thing that I think our summer experience showed us and teaches us is it reflects a bit of, and I want you to stay with me, what we really think about church down inside. You see, I think we associate church with serious business. Serious business. We are about serious business here. And sometimes we come here and act very serious. Not saying that that's terribly wrong all the time. It's not. But you know, I have to say I'm as guilty as anybody about that. I'm very serious about my job. I work hard. I think too much about it. And sometimes I miss kind of the edges of the joy and the fun. Now, they're not polarized against seriousness. Don't get me wrong. But that way of thinking church is about such matters of importance all the time. See, takes us places. And often it is, like today. Baptism is terribly important to us, let's be honest. We do weddings. We do burials. You know, the old language, we hatch, match, and dispatch. I need to use that more often. I got a good laugh. But you know, we also said it was serious. That's serious business. Serious business. And I want to say, if you're going through something troubling and tough, I hope that our love and our pastoral care and our journey with you matches how hard it is for you. That's where it counts. But sometimes I think we put it on those other things. And let me also say, I'm not knocking our liturgy. I am an Episcopalian. I love Anglican worship. Been doing it my entire life. I mean, our words, think about it, our words and music actually have real thoughts in them. They're not just emotion. They want you to think. They help us think. They help us form theology and ideas, help us navigate life. They really do. Think about the hymn we just sang. What powerful words, what it's trying to express. You see, you have to pay attention and stay awake in the Episcopal Church. You're going to get lost. That's just part of it. But I want to say all of that does something about setting boundaries, whether we know it or not. Strong boundaries. Strong boundaries. And the outcome, I think, so if you've listened to all that, a simple point. There's something in Episcopalians, it's probably in everybody, there's a right way and a wrong way. And we have a lot of that. There's a right way and a wrong way. And I want to say, okay, I get that. That may be true. Is it always true? I don't know. And I wonder what that attitude's like in me. It's right, it's wrong. It's I like this or don't. No, it's right or wrong. Rather than thinking through, was it valuable? You see, it kind of closes us down. It is a boundary we can't exceed sometimes. We can't push through it. You remember Saturday Night Live? One of my favorite skits, and I loved it and hated it, was the church lady. Remember the church lady? Oh my gosh. Whoa. She was funny, prim, so pietistic. She was also snarky and mean. And always, where was her energy? Pointed at people who weren't doing the right thing. Remember that? And I thought, you know what? That's what people think of me as a Christian in L.A. They not playing. That's why I said it was funny. And then after I quit laughing, I think, whoa, they really think that's what we do. You see, some of that right or wrong then gets us to tell people what's right or wrong. Don't you think? It's right or wrong. You need to learn it this way, do it this way, think this way, believe this way. That's what we do. All churches do it to some degree. And you know, it focuses us a bit, as the church ladies show us, showed us that we are more preoccupied with what other people are doing than what I'm doing. So now if you've bothered to listen this long, I finally made my point. Because that's what Philippians is trying to say. Yeah, maybe we're the conscience for the universe. I don't know, that's a pretty big job. But I know one thing, Paul is trying to say something so different and radical, and Paul is so misused. He is abused and misused in Christian thought today. And I want you to hear his words. He's not giving us a right or wrong kind of list. He's not saying, do this and you got it worked out. Do this and you're superior. Do this and you can tell people what to do. That is not what this passage is. It is not even close to that, even if that's what the mainstream world thinks of us. Paul is not spewing a lot of negative ideas. In fact, he loves these people. This little church in Philippi, it's a little tiny church. I mean, they fit right there. And he knows them. He knows them all by name. He's traveled with them. And what he's saying is encouraging. You see, instead of beating on them, he's saying, gosh, I love you guys. Y'all are doing great, but I'm going to give you one thought. Live a life worthy of the gospel. Live a life worthy of the gospel. He doesn't even bother to give them a list. He doesn't tell them what that means, and you know why? Because he knows they know. Just like I know you know what that means. Every one of you, if you want to be a Christian, knows what it means to live a life worthy of the gospel. You know whether you're doing it or not. You know whether you can improve. You see, you understand that about yourself. You see where the focus is? The focus is not on other people, it's on oneself. He's saying live like you're trying to work on you. What great advice. But also, what an incredible, insightful way to be a Christian. Now, I know you've heard it all the other ways. And I want to tell you, this tradition that Paul is raising for us is also a huge part of our tradition for 2,000 years. Many of you were raised in a totally opposite world, where it's do the list, do this, you're right or wrong, and you're going to hell if you don't. That is not what he's saying. He's saying, God is with you. God loves you. And I know you're trying. Just live a life worthy of the gospel. You know, that's a tough standard to keep because it's internal. You can't tell me, I have to tell me. It is something to be kept daily. I have to be mindful of this. You see, Paul is raising the bar, not lowering it. I want you to catch that. He is raising the bar. It's way easier to tell other people what they ought to be doing than for me to work on my own agenda. You see, he's shifting the whole field of how we work, live together. And I think this is where the church needs to be. And if we're not here, we will not be here in 50 years. Because the communities beyond us know that we're the church lady. We have to show them we are not. It is that simple. We're not the church lady. Yeah, I still think it's funny. I love a lot of that stuff. But I'm not busy telling other people they're going to hell or they should be doing this or that. Seriously? That's what I'm going to spend my time on? I'm going to trust Paul. He said, you better work on yourself. I had this experience. I want to tell you a funny experience that I think about almost every day in some way. You know, I work out and I do so just so I can stay hiking and, you know, I was an older parent with younger kids, so I always knew I better stay in shape. And so I started doing boot camp years ago, lifting weights. I don't really like that, but I do it. And years ago when I started with this group of some guys I didn't know, one of the guys in the group, we met every day at 5:30, 3 days a week at 5:30. One of the guys was named Rex. Rex is African American. He's a barber. He is 5'5" and weighs 225 pounds. And his arms are so muscular, they're bigger than my legs. Well, one day we're working out, and Rex is sitting there, and he's sitting on the bench, and he's curling 100-pound weights in each hand. I'm not joking. He's just whipping those. And I'm standing there, and I'm standing in front of the mirror. You know what I'm curling? 10 pounds. I'm not good. Rex looks up at me, and he said, John, and he had this funny voice. I can still hear him. I hope he hears this story. It's wonderful. I said, yeah, Rex. He said, John, don't cheat yourself. Don't cheat yourselves. That's what Paul's saying to us this morning. Don't cheat yourself. Can you imagine the potential in you when you decide to reach the potential? Can you imagine the potential in us when we reach potential? Well, that's when the community really sees us at our best. You realize that's really what we're trying to do for Garland today. We're trying to help him understand that God has God's Spirit in him and he has potential that he can reach. It raises the bar. It does not lower the bar. It raises the bar. It does not lower it. You see, Paul shifts totally the focus on not how bad we are, which people think we're preoccupied with, but on how good we might be. Not how bad we are. But once we reach potential, how good we really might be, and how much good we might really do when we do it. And you know, it happens all around us when we pay attention. I've told you before, my best research people is my wife, and she's always saying, hey, did you see this? And she did it again. I said, no. She said, you need to watch this. So it's a real story. Just happened recently. Russell Lehman, if you saw Russell, attractive guy, 6'3", muscular, handsome, young guy, mid-30s. What was unusual, though, was recently, well, let me describe what happened. He's sitting in a very public place, dressed in business suit, got his briefcase to go. He's on a trip to make a business call, and, well, he just comes apart. He is sitting in a chair, and he is crying. He's bent over, he's moaning, he's rocking, he's falling apart in public, literally falling apart. And I can't even express to you how dramatic it was. He was falling apart in the largest concourse in the largest airport in the United States of America, in full view of thousands of people. This falling apart lasted 7 hours. He sat there 7 hours, grief-stricken. Not one person stopped. Not one. No one made eye contact. Now, if you think that's the point, for me, that's not. You see, I probably would have skipped around him too. You think, gosh, this is bizarre. It was bizarre, rather, to watch him. No one knew what was going on. What is this man who looked so attractive, on his way to catch an airplane? What in the world is going on? Well, what happened was Russell's flight was delayed and then canceled, and he started coming apart. In his words, he said, I had a meltdown. He said, I haven't had a meltdown like that since I was a little kid. He said, I had no idea. I was crying, shaking, rocking. He said, but I was all alone, and the longer I sat there, the more alone I was. 7 hours. Somehow he got himself up out of the airport, across to a local motel so he could spend the night, because his flight was canceled. Came back in the morning to continue his business trip, and guess what? Bad weather, that flight was delayed. And he sat there and he said, all of a sudden his heart rate went up. He started sweating. He was hyperventilating. He said he didn't realize he started rocking. He said, oh no. So he got up and he went, and you know how a lot of times the ticket gates are closed and there's nobody there? He went and hid behind one of those. And one of the employees in the airport went by and saw the top of his head and thought, what is somebody doing there? And went over to check. And looked over and found him in this condition. Another fall apart, a big one, another meltdown. His name is David. And David looked down at him and said, sir, are you okay? What's going on? He didn't say anything back. Later, Russell said, I was in such a state, I couldn't respond. I couldn't even hear him. I just knew there was a man standing there. And then David, our carry-in, sat down with him. Bothered to bring a chair over and sat down and got down on his level and just sat there and talked to him, encouraging him. Say, sir, it's going to be okay. I don't know what's going on. Kind of talk to me, what's happening, where are you going, where are you from, why are you sitting here? And slowly he started getting a snippet of the story between sobs. Richard could tell him what was happening. And so Russell told him what's happening. So he said, I got to do something. He said, don't move, I'm going to be back. So he's an employee, so he got up and went and talked to the counter, the people at the counter. Then he went to the plane and went and talked to the flight crew. And then went and got the pilot. He said, you got to come with me. You need to talk to this young man. We got to get him on a plane. We need to get him to his destination. We need to get this moving. So the pilot came out and sat with Russell and sat and talked to him for a long time. And finally, they kind of got him up and moving, and they actually got him on the plane. David took him on, sat with him for a long time, got him they let him board first, sat down with him. The flight crew was fabulous, got him there. And he went on his way, and David went on his day of work. Later, Russell and David got put back together, kind of almost accidentally. And they got to talk about the experience. Because David, to this point, still had no idea what he had walked into. And Russell said to him, by the way, did you ever wonder what happened to me? And David said, oh, don't worry. He said, yeah, I've got computers. He said, I knew you got on that connecting flight. He said, I saw that you got on the flight that afternoon after your meeting, and you got home. And he said, I called them, and the ticket people there said they saw you out of the concourse. He said, I knew I'd gotten you to your home. Wow. And then Russell said this. He said, I know that you had no idea what was going on, and you had no idea that I'm autistic. He said, you had no idea what was happening. He said, I can't stop those things, but I haven't had one. I work, have a job, travel. I haven't had anything like that in my adult life. He said, but I want to tell you something. When you sat with me, you connected to me on a human level that I can't even describe to you how much it has meant to me. Because he said, now I know I have something I didn't have. He said, I don't really want that experience again, but he said, I have something that you helped give me. He said, now I know that if I have another meltdown, if I'm traveling and that happens to me again, I realize that I've been through the worst of it. I'm going to get through to the other side. He said, you did that. You have given me the courage and the ability to move on. He said, I don't think it will happen again. He said, I cannot thank you enough for being so human. I wonder if we think that in the church, that really what we're here to do is to teach Garland to be more human, not less. That we're here to become more human with each other. Vulnerable, broken, off course sometimes, trying to find our way. And then the other side that Jesus said, forgiving, understanding, peacemaking, and I think loving. You see, they're not opposites. They're part of the same continuum. But I wonder, until we really get human, can we do the other stuff? We think we can, and then people say, you remind me of the church lady. I don't know if any of this is helpful to you, but I've been thinking about it a lot for me. Because I realize I got a lot of that stuff in me. And really what I'd like to have is a lot more of trying to live a life worthy of the gospel. Make it simple. Just do it. Because, when we are loving and forgiving with each other, man, it turns things on and over in ways we can't imagine. We see it all the time. And it actually changes our communities. It is what the world longs for us, to be the best, to find our potential in Christ Jesus. You know what? I guarantee you, y'all will do that today. And prayerfully, we will teach Garland that that's what our job is. Amen.